A pack of African wild dogs, fierce, coordinated, unstoppable, had pursued a herd of zebras through the dry plains just before dawn. The chase was fast, brutal, and unforgiving, and like every hunt, it demanded sacrifice. But this morning, the sacrifice was not prey. It was one of their own. A pup barely 5 months old, ribs faint beneath a spotted coat, struggled to stand. His back leg dragged uselessly behind him, crushed in the chaos when a panicked zebra kicked out during the chase. The impact sent him tumbling into the dirt, bones snapping under force. The world tilted. The sky spun. The sounds of his pack faded to echoes. The instinct to fight was there, but the ability was gone. He tried lifting himself with trembling forelegs, but collapsed again, muzzle pressing into the dust. Pain radiated through him like fire. His breaths came short and sharp. He called to the pack with a fractured whine, but they were already disappearing into the tall grass, loyal but ruled by survival. Injured pups rarely made it. Nature didn't wait. The sun climbed higher, and the heat began to suffocate. Hours crawled by. The pup's eyes grew glassy, his heartbeat unsteady. Vultures circled overhead, patient shadows tracking the slow fate of life. Just when silence seemed to claim the land, faint hoofbeats approached, not hurried like the chase, but steady, cautious, deliberate. A lone zebra mare emerged from the brush. Her coat bore scars from predators past. Her ears twitched at every distant sound, but her eyes dark, warm, intelligent, fixed on the small body trembling in the dust. The wild dog noticed her scent before he saw her shadow. He forced his head up, expecting the threat of a stomp, the final chapter of his short life. But the zebra didn't raise her hooves. She simply stood there, exhaling softly through her nostrils, the warm cloud of breath drifting over his fur. The pup blinked, unsure whether this was mercy or curiosity. His voice was barely a whispering whine now, a fading plea the wind might carry away forever. The mare lowered her head and nudged him gently, not with force, but with something closer to acknowledgement. She sniffed the broken leg, the dust-clotted fur, the pup's shallow breathing. Her ears drooped slightly, and in that moment the wild dog didn't see a prey animal towering over him. He saw something ancient, an instinctive recognition of loss. Because this mare carried her own grief. Weeks earlier, lions had taken her newborn foal. She had stood powerless while the night echoed with her baby's last cries. Her body healed, but her heart carried the absence everywhere she went. Since that night, she had walked alone, separated from her herd, roaming with the aimless silence of a mother with no one left to protect. Now, looking at the wounded pup struggling to cling to life, she didn't see a predator. She saw the size small, like her foal had been. The eyes wide, confused, desperate. The fear so pure it mirrored her own. The pup shivered violently, and the zebra reacted without hesitation. She stepped closer, positioning her body to block the harsh sun. Her shadow fell over him like shelter in a world that offered none. He stopped crying, not because the pain had lessened, but because warmth grazed his skin again, a warmth that felt like safety. As dusk approached, predators stirred, and distant roars rolled across the plains like thunder. Hyenas laughed somewhere unseen. The zebra lifted her head, ears rotating sharply. Every instinct demanded she run, join a herd, vanish. But she remained. Sleep resisted the pup, but exhaustion finally claimed him. His breathing slowed, his body curled weakly. When the moon rose, painting the savanna blue silver, the zebra stood guard, silent, motionless, unwavering. When jackals crept closer, the mare drove them back with a ferocity born not of power, but of purpose. She bared her teeth, charged with pounding hooves, until shadows retreated. All night, she never left. By the time morning returned, the pup still lay motionless, but alive. His heartbeat, though faint, continued in quiet defiance. The zebra stepped closer, lowering her head again, her muzzle brushing the side of his face. The pup opened his eyes slowly. There was fear at first, then confusion, then something new. Recognition. Not of species, not of difference, but of presence. He tried to rise again, front legs, pushing, hind leg dragging uselessly, but the zebra nudged him gently back down, as if urging him not to fight the pain alone. And for the first time since his injury, the pup stopped trying to crawl away. He simply stayed close, not out of trust, but because he no longer felt entirely alone. The wilderness had written many stories of hunts, of rivalries, of instinct, but never this. A wild dog pup, broken and abandoned. A zebra mare, grieving and alone. Two enemies bound by loss, sharing breath beneath the rising sun. And neither of them yet knew. This fragile connection wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of history on the savannah. Because what happened next would challenge everything nature was known for. And the savannah would never forget it. Days passed, each sunrise revealing a miracle the savannah was never meant to witness. A wild dog pup, surviving where he should have already been lost to scavengers and night hunters. The zebra mare, whom we now know was named through the whispers of the plains as Mara, never left his side. The pup, weak, limping, but alive, began to respond to her presence with the instincts that once tethered him to a pack. When she moved, he watched. When she grazed, he rested. When she jolted at unseen danger, he pressed himself closer to her trembling hooves. The bond was fragile, imperfect, but something deeply natural had taken root. They were two creatures stitched together by grief, one losing her foal, the other losing everyone before life had barely begun. The pup's leg never healed the way nature would demand. It remained stiff, dragging slightly as he walked, a reminder carved into bone of the day the world turned against him. But life pulsed in him again. He began to eat the scraps left from vultures' leftovers, food he never would have risked claiming alone. Mara shielded him while he scavenged, placing her body between his vulnerability and the danger that smelled weakness from miles away. The savannah noticed. Hyenas first. A clan moved through the tall grass one afternoon, 3 adults and 2 subordinates, their laughter echoing like cracked bones rattling in dry wind. They saw Mara the lone zebra, and they saw the pup. Weak, small, injured. Easy. The hyenas approached in widening circles, eyes shining, jaws slack with anticipation. The pup felt their presence immediately and froze, instinct screaming danger louder than his heartbeat. Mara stamped the ground, ears flat, tail stiff, her body caught between terror and courage. Hyenas were strategic. They fanned out, cutting escape routes, herding prey toward each other with precision. They didn't want the zebra, not yet. They wanted the small, limping pup, the one who couldn't run. Mara stepped in front of him, blocking their path. Her muscles twitched beneath her striped coat. She shook with fear she didn't know how to hide. She wasn't a fighter, not against hunters like these. She didn't have a herd behind her. She didn't have weight in numbers. She only had conviction. But conviction is rarely enough in the wild. The lead hyena charged first, low, fast, jaws aimed for the pup. Mara reacted before instinct could second-guess courage. She lunged forward, striking with both front hooves. Dust exploded beneath her, and the hyena barely avoided the blow, swerving to the side with a yelp. The others closed in. The pup cried a sharp, desperate sound that pierced the savannah's stillness. He didn't run. He couldn't. His injured leg dragged helplessly. He backed himself against Mara's hind leg like a cub pressed to its mother. Mara lashed out again, this time connecting. Her hoof landed squarely on the shoulder of the second hyena. A deep crack sounded, followed by a furious snarl. The pack grew more aggressive, circling tighter, the air filled with growls and churning dust, and the rapid pounding of Mara's heart. Then something happened, something no one expected. Not the hyenas, not the zebra, not even the pup who had already lived beyond his miracle. A sound answered the pup's cry. A howl. Not one, but many. It rose in the distance, broken, jagged, echoing through the acacia-lined horizon. Then another answered, and another. The pup's pack, those who had left him behind under the rule of survival, were near enough to hear the call of distress. Hyenas paused. The zebra froze. The pup stared toward the distant grassland, a whine breaking from his throat, part recognition, part fear, part hope. The wild dogs emerged not as shadows but as a force, the alpha female first, her mottled coat catching the sun, then the rest of the pack. They had returned not out of sentiment, but because evolution taught them one thing. A cry meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant food or threat. But pack loyalty, when it sparked, was powerful. The hyenas knew. Numbers had shifted. The hyena clan backed away slowly, snarls fading into grumbles. Then silence. They retreated toward the brush, beaten not by strength alone but by unity. The pup sank to the ground, body trembling with a mixture of relief and confusion. His pack approached him, sniffing his injured leg, circling, assessing. He lowered his head, expecting rejection. Packs often left the wounded; they couldn't carry weakness. But as the wind shifted, it carried something the pack could not ignore: the scent of the zebra. The scent of protection. The scent of an alliance that shouldn't exist but somehow had. Mara stood still, towering over the pup, her stance unwavering. She expected nothing. She demanded nothing. She simply remained the mother she lost, reflected in the pup she found. The alpha female studied the unlikely pair. Her ears twitched, her gaze sharp. She moved past the zebra not to threaten, but to acknowledge. She pressed her muzzle gently against the pup's head, accepting him not as a burden, but as a life reclaimed. The pack did something they had never done. They lay down near Mara, keeping a respectful distance, but staying. The wild dog pup was no longer abandoned, but he was no longer just theirs. He belonged to something unspoken, an invisible thread woven between loss and redemption. Mara stayed as well, not returning to the herd that once defined her, but remaining with the creature who had rewritten her grief into purpose. They moved across the savannah slowly, an impossible formation, a zebra mare leading, a limping wild dog pup at her side. A pack following behind like silent guardians. The land had seen alliances, fleeting, strategic, temporary, but never this. Seasons changed. The pup grew, no longer tiny or fragile, but resilient, clever, quick, with 3 strong legs and 1 determined one. His bond with Mara never faded. When dangers came, he alerted her. When waterholes crowded with threats, she shielded him. They communicated through glances, posture, presence. Not predator and prey, not mistake or miracle, but family. For animals do not share language, yet they understand loss. They do not share cultures, yet they understand need. They do not share blood, yet they understand love. One dawn, as mist clung low across the grass, the wild dog stood beside Mara atop a ridge overlooking the plains they now called home. He leaned his head against her shoulder, and she brushed her muzzle along his back. A pup once left for dead, a mother once grieving. 2 lives rewritten not by instinct or advantage, but by something rarer, compassion stronger than fear. The savannah changed that year. Stories spread in the silent language of animals: the zebra who protected a predator, the wild dog who guarded a grazer, the union that defied nature's unwritten code. Some called it unnatural, some called it a miracle, but the land remembered it for what it truly was: history. Because sometimes the wild doesn't follow rules. Sometimes it writes new ones. And on this savannah, where survival was worshipped like law, a zebra and a wild dog proved the unthinkable. Strength isn't always teeth and speed. Sometimes, it's the choice to protect what you could have walked away from.